Now it's time to play everybody's favorite game.
Good news. Good news.
We have something in combination. Jesus Christ. We can't wrong.
The world. What's goody?
Way to go, neato, gang. Yes.
That is good news. I'll be honest, Reax.
Good news.
Good news.
You saw the title.
That is good news. I'll be honest, Reax. That is good news.
Man, they caught Luigi. Luigi? Listen, I'm not here to. By the way, Good News Travel Fast, Oren Lamena. Good News Travel Fast reaction channel. All of the things. If it's happening, it's worth reacting to. And I had to come on here because I was in the middle of doing some work. Oh, look at that lion. I was in the middle of getting some work done. And I saw that they caught Luigi. And I definitely have thoughts. I'm pretty sure you have thoughts. I think we've all been kind of thinking the same thing since the United Healthcare CEO was gunned down in the early morning hours in Midtown Manhattan on some V for Vendetta shit. With the landscape being as it is, the current landscape of just American everything, I just thought it was fascinating. I think the whole story in and of itself is fascinating. So I just wanted to get on here and talk about it because it's never a dull moment. It's never a dull moment in this fucking soap opera, this goddamn comedic movie that we live in called America. And it has all the makings of an HBO fucking series. Like, what the fuck? Give it up for American drama. Luigi Maglione. Oh, wait, that might seem like that round of applause was for him doing the deed. When the story broke, how'd you feel about it? I mean, and everybody's been talking about this, obviously. Just how the response has not been the horror, I think, that many would expect when you see a cold-blooded murder. Like, we're not new anymore. I remember when there used to be a debate in my day, I'm going all Nikola Jokic, in my day, in my country, there used to be kind of a debate as to whether or not, like, when are we going to see a full-scale murder happen, like, on live television? Now I'm dating myself, right? Because I just said live television. I grew up on, occult classics like Faces of Death. So it was like this VHS tape that was circulating about that was, a bunch of murder. And it would make it into the hands of one of your friends. And we sat around and we'd watch people get obliterated by trains. I don't know if I'm proud of it. I mean, I was a kid. And kids do, things like get into their dads or their uncles or their friends' big brothers' porn collections. We also find Faces of Death tapes and pass them out amongst each other. And so I just remember, but, you get into the internet era. I mean, you fast forward into the 2010s. Not even just the 2010s. There's just been all kinds of wild shit happening. But I do remember that being kind of a conversation. And then, we've seen, obviously, police cam footage of the type of shit they've been into. So I'm just saying, George Floyd, it's not new, is what I'm saying. It's not new for us to see death unfold on what is in effect the television now, which is the internet. It is new that an on-camera death was celebrated, pretty much widely celebrated as this one was. And it has everything to do with what we feel, I think, as a consumer base when it comes specifically to the insurance industry. Like what we've felt. And this kid, an Ivy League UPenn graduate, has jumped into infamy as kind of a, dare I say, like a cult hero. Like, it's weird when you see, it's weird when we see people like lamenting his actions, or it's kind of weird. Is it me? It's kind of weird. You're like, what? What social class do you emerge from when you are, aghast by people's, listen, man, the celebration of anybody's demise is crass. I can see where you would say, that's crass. You don't do that. And at the same time, a lot of us are like, is it? Let me see if I got this video. Hold on. This shit, listening to how he was caught, this whole story is just fucking crazy. And this comes on the eve, mind you, or the day after Jay-Z makes it into the Diddy category officially. When I started this channel, the whole point was, when you look at the name, it's like good news travels fast. And my slogan is, breaking news travels first, bad news travels far and wide, but good news travels fast. And my hope was to always come on here and break away from the theme of most content channels, which is tea and gossip and bullshit, and try and find the silver linings. Listen, I mean, that was literally was, my initial motivation. And being that I'm an older guy, I feel like it's my job to step in. My job is probably a little grandiose. I feel like it's my duty to step in and be the voice that I feel like I was designed to be, which is, I come out of a generation of people that straddle this era that we're living in. I come out of the analog world into a digital world. So I see the benefits of a digital existence, and I also remember the world before this. And I think it gives a unique perspective. You know what I mean? I'd like to think that I'm very technically sound, very technically savvy. So I'm not, a dinosaur in that regard. I'm not your grandfather.
International trade isn't easy. It takes tons of cooperation and agreements. And sometimes it gets complicated and messed up by our own.
But I do also see the detriment and the degradation of our humanity in this digital era. You know what I mean? So I came into this space hoping, because quite honestly, I struggled for a long time with the thought, like, do you just want to be another person that, if I'm good at this, just addicts people to being on these devices more? Do you want to be that? I mean, that's a serious conversation that I have with myself. Like, do you want to be that? Do you want to be a part of this ecosystem that pulls us further and further away from an analog living? When I say an analog living, I'm talking about people interacting with people. And You know, I can't get on here and just DJ academic time. And then sometimes, you know what? I feel like fuck all that. You know what I mean? It's not that serious. It's not that serious. And better to be entertaining and be a platform and a voice that can at least alleviate some of the pressure. And then there's that space that's right down the middle. Today I'm feeling right down the middle. Because to be honest with you, the Jay-Z thing, hey, an easy conversation to have in response to the Jay-Z thing is, what the fuck was niggas in the 90s really doing that these cats were able to victimize children? If it is at all true, his participation in those things. I grew up on 90s hip hop. And the contradiction that we are constantly finding ourselves in as a community. When I say a community, I'm talking about a hip hop, urban, black community. Whether it's outrage over Andrew Schultz comments about K-Dot and us, the royal we, the collective we running to K-Dot's defense as if he needs it. And then having that easily, I think, deflected by somebody saying, I don't know if there's so much virtue in hip hop as to want to defend one man's honor with what the bulk of the content has embodied. We were going to dinner for my sister and we were just talking about how Doechie's album is dope. And it's a break and it's a hope that hip hop can get back to being kind of artistically viable, not just club viable, not just pop music numbers viable. But it's like it's hard to, occupy that moral high ground when you just kind of think about what the culture has contributed internally to itself from a subject matter point of view in general. But then it's like, and you niggas was fucking kids? Robert? Sean? You feel me? It's like, it's that, so you got a whole community now rushing to Kendrick's defense, and then it's kind of like, well, what are y'all niggas gonna say about, what are you gonna say about Sean and Robert, right? It just makes for these easy deflections. And I'm one who wants to feel like we have some standing to, when I say we, I mean hip-hop, rap, black community has some standing, some righteous stand to take. Because one of your heroes, I don't like Jason Whitlock all that much, but his response to the whole Puffy thing, to the whole Jay-Z thing, let me get it. Because I do get it. It's a place, like I said, it's a place that I sit. Look right there. So I went down the rabbit hole with the whole Jay-Z and Diddy thing going on. Never thought that this man could be a predator. But what do I know? Crazy things that I found out. Ooh, this seems... It's funny how we look at stars. I'm going to get to Luigi. Don't trip. Because that is part of this. Which is really like, is this dude a criminal? Do you think that he'll be, if he gets in front of a jury of his peers, with the way that this thing has been responded to, pretty much the consensus has been like, oh, CEO of a United Healthcare shot and killed. Oh, I'm so sad about that. Nope. Like, in general, it's been kind of celebratory. People have been kind of like, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun type shit. With Jay-Z, it's like, I thought I knew him. How? How did any of us? Why this relationship that we have with celebrity, where it's because you see someone and you consume their art. Let's call it art. It is art. You consume their expressions. I still think Reasonable Doubt is one of the greatest works of art that hip-hop has ever produced. I still think that Jay-Z is one of the greatest to ever do it when it comes to MCing. But when a guy like Jason Whitlock says, oh yeah, Sean Carter steps out on a limb and claims righteousness because he was a righteous drug dealer. It's like, ooh, ouch. Ouch. But his isn't a tale much different than the country from which he emerged, right? Like, America wants to, as a whole, assume this. This is my problem with it. I was gonna write this in a response to Jason Whitlock, then I had to go and get some work done. But it's like, you do realize that, you know, if you hold true to any of the American tenets of, you know, truth and justice and right, well, how was this country founded? So why would you think that some of its greatest heroes, my point is, why would you think some of its greatest heroes would be any different than the spirit in which this country was founded and conducts itself to this day? Why would Jay-Z be any different? Taking advantage of kids, though, we've all, I think that anyone who's ever dabbled in or knows anything about the criminal element, there's always been one common thread. And it's why chomos never want to go to prison, right? No women, no kids. That's the deal. No women, no kids. So it's like, and the more stories that come out and the more that you hear about guys and that, there's no gray area. You know, Foxy Brown was 10 years this nigga's junior whenever they dated. She was a teenager. He was in his 20s. But child rape, like child essay is like, for what? Not when I say for what, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like this Hollywood power elite culture of victimizing and abusing for, I don't know, some sick empowerment had never been anything that really touched the rap community, to be honest with you. It hadn't touched us. We could always say, yeah, we might be your drug dealers. We might be your gangbangers. We ain't your chomos. Maybe not, though.
I was going in the house. I was right in front of my house. And I got this phone call from him. He was like, come by the studio. And I'm like, man, I'm looking at the door, and I'm like, I could just go in the house.
When you went into the studio to make this album, American Gangster, there was a buzz about you. Jay-Z's back. He's creating music.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to get involved. People that hadn't been with you for a while, like Diddy.
Yeah.
Comes to you and wants to be the executive producer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you look at him and say, man,
you can't executive produce an executive producer.
What'd you say to him? What was that?
That's what I said. You can't executive producer. But he said, man, you're the greatest, all right? But even Michael Jordan had a coach.
That's what he said.
He's great.
And you listened to him.
Yeah. What happened was, I was going in the house.
You know, Jay-Z is just a very interesting figure in culture, right? Because no one ever saw this coming. Charlie Rose, a Charlie Rose Jay-Z interview, I think that wasn't on anybody's bingo card. That wasn't on anybody's Jay-Z bingo card. I don't care how good Reasonable Doubt was. Most Def, for sure, a Charlie Rose type of guy. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the story arc for his career is pretty remarkable in certain regard, you know? You know, when Nas ethered his ass, and a couple of the lines that he said, you know what I mean? Scared to smile, they called you ugly. Well, life is harsh. Hug me, don't reject me, or make records to disrespect me, blatant or indirectly. When he's at him, and he's just talking about his looks, Joe Camel looking, you know what I mean? What you think you getting girls now because of your looks? Negro, please. You know mustache having with whiskers like a rat compared to beans you whack. And your man stamped and made you take the blame, you ass. For that guy to marry the hottest chick in the game, to marry Beyonce. You feel what I'm saying? Like his story arc is almost super villainesque if he is what he is alleged to have been in for some years now. What he's been connected to. You know, becomes a billionaire in rap, like a mogul. He's working, you know, he's wearing the John Michael. He went from the Caesar to the Basquiat cut. You know, just, you know, the circles that he runs in. You know, he's running with Obamas. And you feel me? No one saw that coming.
Right in front of my house. And I got this phone call from him. He was like, come by the studio. And I'm like, man, I'm looking at the door, and I'm like, I could just go in the house and be done with it. You know, but I'm one of them people that believe everything happens for a reason. He called me. He never called me to come to the studio before.
Not ever in your life.
Mm-mm. So I pull away from my house. I head over to the studio. I get there. He's playing all these lush samples and all the 70s soul music, which relates straight to the movie, because that's the backdrop for this album that I made is set against these soul samples. You know,
he is, in fact,
so he's playing
an American gangster. And all of that is acceptable. This is let me pull up hold on real quick. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to pull up I just want to pull up the Jason Whitlock tweet. Because we were very accepting of no one. So murdering someone for being a nuisance is okay now. I don't know about all that. No one confused Jay-Z with a choir boy. You know what I'm saying? This is what Jason Whitlock said. And I thought it was an interesting take because this one. My understanding is Jay-Z is only sold to users 18 and over. Had to have 2 forms of ID to buy from Jay. A very honorable drug dealer. He would often clasp the hand of every buyer and say a little prayer before completing the deal. You know, he was obviously, he's always, like he says it here. FYI, I've always shredded Jay-Z for years. I hate Jay-Z and his music. I hate the way he's passed himself off as some sort of role model. He's satanic, and so is his music. I apologize if you can't see the obvious sarcasm. Listen, it's like this. No one ever and we never took exception with that, right? He's openly spoke about his rise to fame, but like I was gonna respond to Jason Whitlock. You know who sells more drugs than Jay-Z ever could? The United States of America, and its government. I mean, in fact, whether it's Iran-Contra, whether it's COINTELPRO, whether it's letting the Sackler family deal dope legally and string out more than half of a generation with the opioid crisis. Jason Whitlock is a America First, Love America guy. Do you take these stances with the system, mind you, that sits behind that? Because they also sit behind Jay-Z. It's often it's cliche to say, but it's like, I guarantee you this, niggas ain't, for the most part, apart from whatever we saw in American Gangster, niggas ain't trafficking drugs past American borders. And the people who do are not doing so without some pretty glaring green lights from the people who are supposed to be protecting the borders. Because the only other conclusion that one can draw is, if, in fact, the United States of America is incapable of keeping drugs from coming across its borders illegally, why in the world should we feel safe that you can protect us from anything else? You can pinpoint a rocket up an Al-Qaeda member's ass, but you can't keep a third world country, quote unquote, from smuggling drugs across by the kiloton in tires, on boats, whatever. Okay, you can't stop that. Why should we feel safe then? Why should me who, when I do pay taxes, why should I feel like my tax dollars are being spent wisely in protection of it? You can't keep drugs out. If you believe that shit and you believe it's so hard to police the U.S. border, I got a healthcare CEO position to offer you. It just opened up. So it's like, and I've often felt like this about drugs and drug usage. To be honest, they used to, when I was growing up in my day, the Just Say No commercials. Let's see if I can find one. These Just Say No ads were hilarious because I don't know anyone who I grew up with who had the experience.
Hey, David, get lost, will you? Hey,
No, this
let
one.
the kid. Hey, I know. What are you doing? Hey, Davey, want to try something? Hey, come on, man, leave him alone. Come on, try it, Davey. I don't like this. Try it. Come on, take it.
No thanks.
Kid's gonna be alright. If someone offers you drugs, what is it with you guys? Just say no.
Just say no. For the most part, with the exception of, here's what was so insidious, I think, about the Sackler family. What's so insidious about, we're talking about Jay-Z and, just Jason Whitlock and other people's disdain for him because he openly admitted to selling drugs on the way to the top. What's so insidious about, again, I've never heard of the experience of anyone that we ever knew who ended up getting themselves strung out on drugs where it was pushed on them at gunpoint. It's a choice. Like it or not, it's a choice. Now, sometimes it's made by people or was made by people or is made by people who are in emotional states where they're just looking to escape. It's the same reason why people drink. But again, they're making a choice. Now, in the case of the Sackler family and the opioid crisis, most of the people who ended up addicted to opioids via painkillers were not making the choice to be addicted. What they were doing was going to their doctor. And see, their doctor was prescribing them drugs. And those drugs ended up stringing them out because that drug was heroin. And that drug was allowed to be peddled by doctors and pushed by doctors by the Food and Drug Administration, which is a government agency, which knew that the Sackler family was peddling dope and overlooked it. So what is Jason Whitlock or anybody who is so against Jay-Z's right? And I'm not defending any of these other allegations. What I'm saying is that Jay-Z is no worse an American businessman than Jeff Bezos or Phil Knight, who runs Nike sweatshops and produces goods at the hands of basically slave labor just over there. So all I'm saying is that these moralities aren't ones that I choose to dabble in. There's only one area. No women, no kids. Anyway.
All these records, and they're amazing. And I'm like, what are you doing? So I'm putting the Hitman back together. You know, he got LV and Sean C. You know, his whole group. And I'm like, but what are you doing all this type of music? Because it was the music that I needed. It was the exact music that, I envisioned in my mind. And he was like, man, I have nobody to give it to. You know, Biggie's not here, and I can't give these to just anybody. And I was like, well,
he thought somebody who had Biggie's power needed it.
Yeah.
And you were the one that he thought worthy of it.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, give me all. I said, what do you do with this music? That's the best part. I said, what do you do with this music? He said, man, I just play it in my house, and I just run around with my socks on.
So you take it.
So I took these tracks. It's like 30 of them, by the way. It's 30.
Is this nigga Lex Luthor, man? Is Jay-Z a super villain? Because I can tell you this, like, as a political move, it kind of took the mask off by saying, yeah, I sold drugs on my way to the top. Yeah, I've been involved in some nefarious activity on my way to the top. But I turned all that around. Now I'm working on prison reform. Now I'm, I buy Basquiat paintings, and, I'm in the MoMA, and I'm a legit businessman. I buy and sell companies, title and whatnot. And all the while in his background, you got diddler tendency, bro.
And then I just start picking apart the best ones, and we just start working from there. He didn't executive produce the album, but he was right there. I gave him associate producer credit, and he was very instrumental in the album because he made the foundation to which all the other producers produce into. Because I will play it for the producers.
Like, what's crazy is Charlie Rose has had to step away from his position because of there's a Hollywood thing with sex. It's just. It needs to be looked into. It's not just a Hollywood thing. I guess it's a power thing. But Charlie Rose is one of the most revered interviewers in the game. Was. Black set, just you and your interview subject. Did he know he was sitting with, if the allegations are true, a diddler? Shit's crazy. Because a large part of the story arc, and we're going to get to Luigi, trust me. A large part of the story arc, though, is in American malfeasance it's the crime is one thing. The people who knew and sat idly by speaks of a whole nother very troubling aspect of the culture of fame and power. Because now the house of cards will come down around Sean Combs now, just like it came down around Robert Kelly. And apparently, if things go the way they're supposed to go, might fall around the ankles of Sean Carter, the way that it did with Harvey Weinstein. But a huge part of the story to tell is, what the fuck were y'all doing that knew about this shit and just didn't put a stop to it then? You feel me?
It has to sound like this. Sonically, it has to have this sound on it. And the great thing about Puff, what I really realize is he's a great producer. I've always known this, but it brought me back to that time.
That's what he does best.
What else have you always known about Puffy? These are the questions that people are starting to ask, because it's either birds of a feather or, well, man, I work with that nigga. I didn't know his life, though. Really? For sure. Oops.
And then I just start picking apart the best ones producers produce into. Because, I will play it for the producers and say, it has to fit in this. It has to sound like this. Sonically, it's like Motown over there in my studio. I got horn sessions. I mean, the things that he added after the lyrics was on it, you had to hear the bare tracks. The bare tracks were great tracks, but what he added after it made it a movie and made it complete.
And what was the relevance of Big? Because you and I can talk about it, and I know a bit about him, but what was his
such a charismatic, charming, incredible storyteller, likable guy. Like he's forever loved by hip hop. That's it. It's big.
Because
It's just the way he was. His honesty, his brutal honesty, you know, black and ugly as ever. However, I stay Coochie down to the socks. You know, like he can do that like a Richard Pryor he was in that way.
I mean, that's part of the endearing part of it, right? Is that, you know, these guys divulged their, what we would say, darker, more nefarious sides. Did and performed self-examination, you know, and then went on to, you know, commercial success in the rap game. But what the fuck was going on behind the scenes, bro?
Where he can make fun of himself, you know, and he was just such a charismatic person. And we've had that in common for a while, but we always was competitive with each other as well.
In every way, in fashion and music.
Music. We all in the same business. We're all in the same field. So we competitive, but friendly competitors even along the way. Like when he won the fashion award, you know, I sent him the presents. So we would send each other presents and things like that. I would do stuff like I'll send him cigars and Patron on the red carpet. I make sure when he got on the red carpet, you know, somebody came and gave him some, you know, fresh Cuban cigars. No, I'm not trying to show up. Really, just really.
You're not trying to top him in toys either, are you?
No. We more so just being competitive. Not even so. I'm better than you. Just better moves, like the execution of something. You know?
Beyonce has had a history of occasional slips, particularly when it comes to recalling her age during her first courtship. Over the years, she was mentioned being 17, 18, or 19, depending on the interview. We don't know the exact date when Beyonce and Jay-Z first met, but she did give an idea when talking to 17 in 2008. When I was 18, we first met. 19, when we first started dating, she revealed there was no rush. No one expected me to run off and get married. 1997 and 2000, Jay-Z and Beyonce met at some point. In the 2008-17 cover story, Bey said she met Jay-Z when she was 18, 19. Charlie Rose interviewed Jay said he met Bey 10 years ago, or in 1997. Beyonce, Jay-Z's relationship through the years. Destiny's Child singer met her future husband when she was 17 years old. Roughly, no women, no kids.
When you went into the studio,
she definitely met Jay-Z 16 she definitely met Jay-Z when she was 16. Just to start a 16-year-old girl in 1997. How old is Jay-Z? 56? We're coming to you, Luigi. Born in 69. He's 55. December 4th, 1969. So he's 55. So in 97, 24. Plus 3, 27. He's 28. Yikes. It's just that, you know, it's that weird space, right? It's like, well, they're in a different realm, you know, it's superstardom. And I've talked to my brother about this, which is, again, no women, no kids. But we're talking about Western ideals as well. In other cultures, that is to say, in other cultures, it is not an oddity for teenage girls to be wed off to adult men. Now, we look at life in those cultures and we pick them apart. We wonder about agency and things like that. So it's why we stand on this principle, which I do think is, especially in this world, I just think it's What could a 28-year-old man have in common with a 16-year-old girl? You know? And answering that question is there's just nothing outside of being humans. When it comes to interests, experience, intellect. But then when it gets into the entertainment world, the reason why it wasn't questioned then, same thing with Aaliyah and R. Kelly, is because they were both entertainers. Did that make it any less creepy and as fuck? No. More so even, to be honest with you. Because it's like, well, if you're Jay-Z, couldn't you have easily found any starlet your age? If the point was just to keep it within the business. I saw this last night too, which is crazier. Yeesh. Find it on the
Arena,
there it is.
I don't know what your guys' opinion is about Jaguar Wright, but she has been right about a lot of things. And I'm just going to read a tweet that's recapping the most recent video that is alleging that Rihanna was trafficked to Jay-Z. This tweet is from Liz Crokin. Jaguar Wright suggests Rihanna was trafficked to Jay-Z. Jaguar Wright says producer Evan Rogers discovered Rihanna at 3 a.m. in a hotel room with no parental supervision on the island where she comes from when she was a minor. Wright says Rihanna was then put on a private plane and ended up in a boardroom with Sean Carter, aka Jay-Z. Rogers has claimed he was in Rihanna's native country, Barbados, vacationing with his wife. Rogers has said Rihanna came up to him while he was on the beach and just started singing. In the book The Sound Machine, author John Seabrook wrote of Jay-Z's meeting with the then 16-year-old Rihanna and claimed he would not let her leave the building until she signed with his label. Seabrook wrote that they were there until 3 in the morning while the lawyers worked out the details. Rihanna later recalled Jay-Z saying, "There's only two ways out."
According to Jonathan, he was paid off by someone on Jay-Z's team in order to declare to the media that he started the rumor. They did this to cover up the fact that Jay-Z was in a relationship with Rihanna when she was 16.
Now it sounds like a pattern of behavior. This is well after, obviously, he's been married to Beyonce. So you were in a relationship with Beyonce when she was 16, and you were 28, or thereabout, 27, 28, 26, 27, 28. And then years later, while still married to Beyonce, you're in a relationship with Rihanna, and she's 16, or thereabout. It also sounds like, coerced her into signing a contract stating there's two ways. You're going to sign this contract, and there's only two ways to leave. Either through the window, and there were 200 and some odd stories in the sky, or through the door, meaning you either sign the contract and you leave through the door, or you refuse to sign the contract and we throw you out the window. When Luigi, let's get to my guy, because all of these things center around, I think, the same sickness. If I'm just keeping it a buck, it all centers around the same sickness. There is something in our culture that needs to be exposed and then expunged. I'm not expunged, expelled. There's something about power and this chase for money that seems to distort the moral fiber of motherfuckers. Now, we are talking about a guy who sold drugs to get to where he's going. I don't really hold that. I quite honestly, like I said earlier, that's not the greatest sin. I think that I think it pales in comparison. If we're going to compare drug dealers, if Jay-Z was middleman in keys between other coke dealers, pounds, between other weed dealers. All that just say no to drug shit when the U.S. government was just as complicit in those drugs making it into the United States, let alone, the crack epidemic. All things considered, just participated in an industry that is obviously one that, despite what it professes, the U.S. government has no problem with at all. So should he be held to some higher standard? It just doesn't make, it has to make consistent common sense. So when the Jason Whitlock or whoever stands on these pulpits and I'm like, as soon as you have that same energy for the country that you my tis of thee for, then I can hear you. Otherwise, and if we're going to excoriate drug dealers, because it is my belief that much as like most people start drinking as a decision that they make, is it good for you? No. Do people do it out of the best place energetically? No. Do people use it as an escape and a way to avoid their problems? Yes. But they're still making, in most cases, even as a young adult, a decision on their own, of their own volition. No one's ever held anyone down and forced a beer or a cocktail down anyone's throat. In 99% of drug usage cases, the person used of their own volition. Most users use of their own volition. So, like eaters eat and drinkers drink, druggers drug. Opioid crisis is different. The opioid crisis is different because those were people who went to their doctor. Their doctor prescribed, Nala, give it a rest. Nala, dog. Most people go to their doctor in hopes of having something prescribed. Hold on a second. Let me put this on because she's about to piss me off.
The fact that you mentioned Jay-Z, I want to actually ask you a question about Jay-Z. You said in that interview with Jaguar Wright and Real Life Productions, you stated that you were actually the one responsible for spreading the rumor that Jay-Z and Rihanna had a hookup. Now, my question to you is, do you believe that at all? Did you believe that rumor before you said it, before you claimed it? Do you believe that there's any truth? Not saying that you're accusing Jay-Z, let's make this clear, we're not trying to get anybody in trouble here. But do you believe that there's a possibility that that could have been true?
So as far as the rumor, I came out and said that I started the rumor a long time ago because I was told that I would be rewarded significantly.
Okay.
For coming out and saying that I started the rumor and stuff. I was be the one that was the fall on the sword, so to speak.
Now, you didn't answer the question, you don't have to if you want to.
Yo, chat, I ain't gonna lie, I'm with y'all. After this live, I'm finna go check on my doors, get my dogs ready for some. I ain't gonna, this is some Illuminati shit. All these, there's not one, let me tell you this. Remember when nobody mentioned Diddy? Everybody was like, what story? What are we talking about? Who house got raided? What you talking about? We don't know. Everybody didn't know what to talk. Like, nobody want to talk about Diddy. This is 20 times worse. I can't wait to listen to the Breakfast Club in the morning. Y'all
Right. Anyway. Similar to what Axe talking about there. The same way that the industry sat back and watched these guys run around victimizing women and kids, apparently. And not just women and kids, everybody. It seemed like Puffy was the equal opportunity, take that. An equal opportunity diddler. Anybody can get it. And Jay-Z seems to have a proclivity for teenage girls. I say the U.S. government sat back and watched the Sackler family peddle dope and string people out who did not go for that purpose. Unlike other users, most people who ended up strung out on opioids via the opioid crisis thought that they were being prescribed something that was a painkiller by their doctor who was incentivized to prescribe it. All with the green light of the Food and Drug Administration, which to me is infinitely, if we're splitting hairs, you could split this one like the atom. Infinitely more egregious. So when Luigi, let's get to my guy Luigi, because this is what I want to talk about, to be honest with you.
Studio.
I don't really have a lot of patience for the Jay-Z thing. I don't really have a lot of patience for it. I think it's going to go the way that it goes. I think it's going to go the way that it goes. The letter that he issued, I think, it sounds good. Sounds great. Sounds like what I've always said that an innocent person should do. I feel like innocent people should vociferously defend their innocence and don't settle in backroom, closed door settlement meetings. You say you're innocent? He was very, very, very succinct in his response. This is bullshit. Don't go to no court. Don't try and hold me hostage in in some proceeding that is, backdoor. How much money do I have to give you for this to go away? File criminal charges. He said do it. I can only assume that it's going to be done. There is a question that remains for the industry at large, though. That's all this brings up, by the way, unfortunately. For the victims, anyone who was victimized by these monsters, I'm telling you, it's terrible. But I think what's worse is the complicit nature of silence. These are high-profile cats who now 20 years, 25 years removed from whatever it was that they were involved in, and now people are talking. I'm not talking about victims either. And to Axe's point, I want to hear what the people who sat around and interviewed these cats, you don't think that they heard. Like, come on. And when you're talking about industries and malfeasance in industries, that's why this guy, he's kind of a hero. He's kind of a hero. Because, him being caught up, him being apprehended isn't a definite, this is your guy. Kind of sounding like it, though. United Healthcare CEO Luigi Manioni writing his manifesto. That's not true. Just when you thought the day couldn't get any worse, Luigi Manioni unfortunately does not pay for premium, so he will not receive any ad revenue while everyone is viewing his profile today. That's crazy. He had 5,000 followers? Oh. Let's go and see. Did they take his profile down? What is it? Pep Mangione? Ooh. I would imagine everybody and their mama is on this. Whoa. Computer science at UPenn. 7 years ago. Okay, this is in 2022. Okay, so his post from 2022, December 8th, a year ago yesterday. 2 years ago yesterday. 7 years ago, I gave my high school senior speech on this topic. Today, I will be talking to you about the future, about topics ranging from conscious artificial intelligence to human immortality. Likely, you'll dismiss all this pretty quickly as interesting, but just science fiction. What are we talking about? What is this? Normal range of possible states for the human race, constantly shifting. I don't know what any of that is. This was a retweet from the Andrew Huberman podcast, Smartphones, Social Media, Impact on Mental Health. I got a book about this. Dr. Jonathan Haidt. I think that's the book that I have. Stolen Focus. Let me see. There's nothing that seems all murder the United Healthcare guy manifesto-ish just yet. June 6th, Peter Thiel. Great startups being run by people suffering from a mild form of Asperger's. How we should view this as an indictment of our society. What's this talking about?
Turn this fact around. I think there's this this very strange phenomenon in Silicon Valley where a lot of the most talented startups, a lot of the great startups, seem to be run by people who are suffering from a mild form of Asperger's. And I think we need to always turn this fact around and view this as an indictment of our whole society. Because what does it say about our society when anyone who does not suffer from Asperger's, who is socially well adapted, will be talked out of all of their original creative ideas before they're even fully formed, who will sense this is a little bit too weird, that's a little bit strange, that sounds a little bit crazy, people are looking at me in a weird way. And I think this is something that we must all realize is sort of a deeply endemic problem. They've done these studies at Harvard Business School, which I think you don't often think of the business school student as a profile in anti-Asperger's. They're sort of very extroverted, often have no real convictions.
This is what I'm talking about. People who are great at business, right, which is the centerpiece of a capitalistic society, have no conviction. So you can sit back and watch, because you just want to be able to interview a Jay-Z. So you can sit back and you can watch the heinous activity, or at least third party watch. Like, I've heard things, but you'd never say anything because you want that interview, or you just want to be invited to the party. No real convictions. The one thing that you could say about if Luigi Mangione, the one thing you could say about him, if he is the shooter, is he was a man who had the courage of his convictions. I mean, we don't know the motive completely yet, but I think we can all we've all been drawing the same conclusions. This was some vigilante shit. And I'm sure that as the story goes, maybe he had a family member. If he's, again, that's if he's the shooter. Hold on.
And you have sort of a hothouse environment in which you put all these people for 2 years. And at the end of the 2-year process, they've all sort of talked to each other, and they've concluded they should all try to catch the last wave. And it's invariably a pretty bad idea. In 1989, they all wanted to work for Michael Milken, just a year or two before he went to jail. They were never interested in tech or Silicon Valley except for 99, 2000, when they timed the dot-com bubble implosion perfectly. And then sort of 2005 to 07, it was all housing and private equity and things like that.
This is like, I think, again, this is like a very, very interesting time to live in. Oh, what a time to be alive. The anxious generation. Because everything that we've held dear to as American values, I think, is on trial. Even if it is a etheric trial. I mean, it's definitely playing out in the real world. But everything that defines this place seems to be kind of up in the air. Like, what do we really hold true to? I do this thing, and I'm going to hop off here in a minute, and so I can let my brain rest before I got to do the sports thing. Plus, I got some work I got to finish. But I do this thing in the sports world, and it's like sports just aren't really cutting it anymore for people. I mean, the NBA's ratings are down. Nobody believes that the NFL is real. Everybody thinks the Kansas City Chiefs are handpicked, more than just lucky. Our heroes, quote unquote, whether it's, I don't know why anyone would have Sean Combs as a hero, but it would be the type of personality that Peter Thiel was just talking about, a person who only cares about, because there was nothing artistic about Puffy's or Diddy or whatever the fuck, Brother Love, whatever the names that he was calling himself. There was no real artistic format to his rise. And what most people valued about him, what was held in high regard, was the amount of money that he made. Same thing you could say with Jay-Z. Except for the fact Jay-Z was actually really, I mean, he's a dope MC. He is a dope MC. Whatever comes about from the fallout and whatever's revealed about him in the days and months and years to come, I don't think it takes away from his artistry as a dope MC. I don't. I can separate the two. I think that's the nuance of being able to separate the art from the artist. But we're seemingly at this inflection point, the most recent election. We're just at this inflection point where it's like, how great could it be if at its best, all it did was make its great, and I'm talking about America as capitalism. How great could it be if at its best, all it did was make a few guys, billions and trillions of dollars? You know what I mean? Like, societally, did it push us any closer to being the type of society that could harness the power of its own star on the Kardashev scale and be, and really experience interstellar travel, whatever that means? Are we any closer to peace on Earth? Why is that so hard to achieve? Well, because you started carving the world up into, his and hers plots of land. And the minute that race, me and my brother were talking last night, the minute we went into this transactional way of being amongst each other that was more than just travel and trade, the hunter-gatherer way, like pretty much, and it wasn't the agrarian societies that did it, but in part it did follow soon after. That as soon as people started parking themselves in spaces and then taking up more and more space in order to plant more crops, grow a bigger society, plant more crops, grow a bigger society. Then one guy has more than the other guy. Then this guy wants more because that guy has more. And then this guy wants to acquire more because those two guys have more. And that race is what birthed capitalism, in essence. And then this is my land, and you carve it up. And it's obvious that, however long we've been here, I'm talking about humans, that there were certain tribal lands. But if you investigate like First Nation traditions, they'll never tell you that they own the land. I think it's partially why they were duped into signing treaties upon the arrival of Europeans in America. It's because, one, I don't know what that means. Two, welcome. Well, one, welcome. Two, you want pieces? You want to be here? Sure. I don't have firsthand account of this. I'm just talking about from what I've been told is a tradition of how you look at the land as an indigenous person. So never would you expect anyone else to not see the land like that. And the next thing you know, you're caught up in a zero-sum game of who owns all the land. And it wasn't going to be you. But if anything, it's like this time that we're living in, Cat Williams was fucking hell. How dead on, like imagine the year, look at the year that Cat Williams has had. If somebody were to, okay, I don't want to say that, but a CEO of a healthcare company was gunned down in the middle of the morning, in the early morning in New York, because his healthcare company had capitalistic practices. I assume, we all assume, because his healthcare company held to capitalistic ideals that weren't to the betterment of the society. They were to the detriment of the society. Now, I could tell you that same society needs to look at itself and think, what actually is healthcare? If by the time you go to the hospital, I'm trying to tell y'all it's too late. Healthcare begins with what you put past your teeth and gums. Even in a world where you might not have access to full organic, it's always better to eat. I would venture to guess you'd be better off eating puffed up, inflated GMO fruits and vegetables than you would anything that's in the center of the grocery store. Eat around the edges. You'd still be better off than eating processed foods. Healthcare, in my opinion, we clamor and we fight, and everybody says healthcare is a right. Okay, if you're talking about the dietary type, absolutely. But if you're talking about this shit, look it.
I sure as heck don't want my tax dollars subsidizing the things that are making people sick.
Then what are the proteins that you're producing?
That's something we can't talk about right now. I wanted to wake up in the morning believing what I was doing. This is wealth right here.
Programs like ours demonstrate the kind of policy change that we want to see.
This is our chance to chart a new course.
I want to see people living lives, not just fighting to survive. Just imagine if the government decided to step in on the side of the consumer and the citizen.
We not only can do it, we have to.
So, and I'm not a huge fan of Cory Booker. Anytime he shows up, I'm just like, okay, there's bullshit to follow. But my point is that, from a healthcare standpoint, let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. By the time you go to the doctor, I say that to say, what all of these companies, I think United Healthcare had a 37% rejection rate of claims. The industry average was somewhere around 7%. The business became, I had to send this to my sister, this was crazy just to hear that. Hold on. So crazy. This is crazy to hear. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Check this shit out. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. NBC News. Let me see. Yeah, here it is. This is crazy. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield will not proceed with policy change that would cover anesthesia after certain time limits. That wouldn't cover anesthesia after certain time limits. This is shortly after old boy got popped. Anthem BCBS. That's crazy. My album was BC. Anthem BCBS decided to not proceed with its policy change after widespread outrage, including one leading anesthesiologist group calling it a cynical money grab. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield reversed course December 5th. I think old boy was shot on December 4th on a policy change that would have limited coverage of anesthesia based on specific time limits, which led to outrage across social media from average users to government officials. These are the type of decisions that these companies make. So they were basically saying, you're on the clock for this anesthesia. We're only covering it for, so if this is a 2-hour procedure, better make it in 90 minutes because we only cover up to 90 minutes. And then I guess the patient's on the hook for whatever the rest of the bill is. How crazy is that when you just think about how callous that would be just to improve stock market shareholders' stock worth, right? You make more money, you increase the profitability. How long can we keep doing this is the question. And then a guy like Luigi Maglione shows up and goes, I got an idea. How about we just start shooting some guys? Is that what it takes? Ooh, what's this? Horror vacui. Nature abhors a vacuum. Relevant read. Christianity's decline has unleashed terrible new gods. New atheism assumed that as people abandoned Christianity, they would embrace a sort of enlightenment, secular position. Oh boy, is it Christian nationalist? Is that what this is? The death of Christian Scotland shows that this was wrong. Faith there has been replaced by derangement and the birthplace of the Scottish Enlightenment, which rose out of Christian principles, now worships intolerant new gods. Nature abhors a vacuum is an interesting position for, a political assassin, if he is the guy to have taken. When was that from? April 18th. Modern Japanese urban environment is an evolutionary mismatch for the human animal. Modern Japanese urban environment is an evolutionary mismatch for the human animal. The solution to falling birth dates isn't immigration, it's culture. So he has a lens that he sees the world through. Encourage natural human interaction, sex, physical fitness, and spirituality. Ban Tanga fleshlights and Japanese and Japan real hole custom porn star pocket pussies being sold. This dude has a definite conservative lens. Replace him, but why is this like his areas of interest are kind of scattered. They're kind of all over the place. No, it's not really all over the place. I mean, conservatism seems to be a part of his deal. This is really gonna fly in the face, because what I've seen is that people are saying, "Oh, what is an Ivy League education turning into?" Because he graduated from UPenn. People are like, "Oh, these Ivy League students are out of control, and everybody's considering them to be leftist weirdos." Do these sound like the opinions of a leftist? Do these sound like the supported positions of a leftist, of an extreme radical leftist? Free ethical money for anyone who's paying attention. This succinct 5-minute article by the Telegram overviews agronomics and current state of cell agriculture. Important highlights. Moore's Law is cutting costs from exorbitant levels. Moore's Law is cutting costs from exorbitant levels to something closer to griddle parity at lightning speed. You shoot some people, that parity is definitely reached at lightning speed. It's a fair bet that cell ag will become the next NASDAQ darling as investors tire of the AI boom. It's hard for a small investor to buy into this story. The startups are all private equity ventures, blah, 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 blah. Much of the Western public will resist, though it's amazing what they routinely eat today. So this guy definitely had a health lens, definitely health conscious. Vested interests are starting to resist furiously, but they're not fools. Cargill, Tyson, okay. Lab farming should help us meet surging world food demand. Another 2 billion people move up the protein ladder. This is my biggest, quite honestly, just me personally, I just think that we've bought into, I told a friend the other day on Instagram, she was like, I took up vegetarianism because my body rejects meat, but I miss meat. Or no, she was like, I asked ChatGPT different, ways to augment my diet without meat because my body rejects meat. And I just simply said to her, has it ever occurred to you that the human body was never really, or did ChatGPT say anything to you about the human body not being set up to digest meat? We are not meat eaters. And you need to look no further past the teeth in your head to prove that. Open up the mouth of a carnivorous, like a dog. Everybody, for dog owners, not owners, but keepers, let's call you. I don't own my dog. You weren't set up to eat meat. You were set up to eat plants and fruit. That's what our canines are for. Those 2 canines that you have are good for piercing fruit. So are your front. They're for piercing the skin on fruit. They weren't meant for your incisors. They weren't meant for masticating meat. Now, despite adaptation to the tradition, it's just not set up to do that. So most people who are, so when you think of all type of colon issues and colonic issues and digestive issues and, obesity issues, premature aging issues, cancers, all those things might very well be attributed simply to what you put past your teeth and gums, especially in the search for protein. There's a guy named Yaki Awakened. He's far better explaining these things. I'm more of a knucklehead professed believer, but I'm pretty much meatless. I do eat proteins. I still love fish. I still love salmon. But for the most part, the human diet is out of whack when animal protein is set on the highest value scale on the ladder. Bum, bum, bum. This guy definitely has a lens that he looks at life through. Where was the cops talking about him being caught? I thought this was hilarious. Hold on. He was caught in a McDonald's. Like, what? Let's see. New York cops are all proud of themselves, too. This was the lady.
A firearm on his. Upon further investigation, officers recovered a firearm on his person, as well as a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They also recovered clothing, including a mask consistent with those worn by our wanted individual. Also recovered was a fraudulent New Jersey ID, matching the ID our suspect used to check into his New York City hostel before the shooting incident.
Guy, right?
Additionally, officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset. Upon further investigation...
I want to know the new photos. Come on, why didn't you have this in Rosario Mark, 128 Sherman Place, Maplewood? Damn, how did he get a hold of all this stuff? Hi, it's me, Luigi. What? Get caught by the police. You're so... People are... Like, if this dude goes to trial... If this cat goes to trial, what are the chances that a jury of his peers convicts him? This is going to go... I've seen so many, like... I watch Law and Order. I love Law and Order. All the seasons. Give me all the seasons, for the most part. Health insurance CEO killer Luigi has been taken into custody and was carrying a manifesto that listed his grievances with the insurance industry. I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. These parasites had it coming. Damn. Does anybody stop making him famous? He's infamous already. You're not going to make him more famous. He is the John Wilkes Booth of our, I mean, and the fucked up part about it is his victim was no sympathetic figure. So it's like, looks like, wait, what is this? Looks like we found the motive. He's got something in his back. His trial is going to put the entire healthcare system through the ringer. Surprising they took him alive. This story is not going anywhere. No time soon. What is this? What is this? Was that an x-ray that he had? And like he had some procedure and these things were placed into, what is that? Like his spine, that's his spine. Is that his tailbone? Okay, here goes his his fake New Jersey driver's license. Which was issued this year, June 18th of this year. His driver's license was issued. Rosario Mark. I mean, the only thing that one can assume is that he'd been planning this since before June then, right? Sounds like self-defense to me. Like there's no sympathy for the victim. And I don't think there should be. Like I said, let's play a game of comparative stories. Let's say Sean Combs. This is all hypothetical. Let's say Sean Combs and Sean Carter both are found guilty. This is some Samuel Jackson Time to Kill shit. Let's say Sean Combs or Sean Carter are both found guilty of every crime that they're accused of. Right? And sometime between the trial or before conviction, one of them is taken out. But it's you're pretty assured that they're guilty of what they've been. Will there be sympathy for that person? You feel what I'm saying? If someone, shot and killed Harvey Weinstein, is Harvey Weinstein a sympathetic figure? It's interesting too, because especially in this country where I've seen it become pretty normal for a particular political side to have no problem in defaming and kicking a man while he's down, so to speak, in terms of George Floyd. Or even Jason, look at this. Jason Whitlock said this about Trayvon Martin. Oh no, that was during his thing. He was talking to somebody today and he's like, oh, I have a problem with Trump's nominee for AG because she was on the wrong side of the Trayvon Martin thing with George Zimmerman. And the whole thing there was, well, Trayvon Martin was a criminal and he deserved to die. Same thing that they'll say that I hear those people saying about George Floyd, which I'm like, why do you need to kick this dude when he's down? Like literally? Let's say he's everything that you said he was. Did he still deserve? That means he deserved to be unalived. So those same people, I'm assuming, should be cheering the demise of this CEO, right? Is that too far? Is that too big of a leap? Is he himself a criminal? Was Mark, what was his last name? Johnson or whatever. Was he a criminal? Kinda. Why do you think everyone's reacting the way that they don't? Their practices are criminal. We live in this place where there's this delineation between criminal activity. Corporate criminal activities, oh, well, that's just cost of doing business. We live in the greatest nation in the world. Innovators. The Sackler family. Innovators. The cost of doing business. So if somebody pops one of them, shouldn't that same sort of vigilante justice that is celebrated in some cases, Kyle Rittenhouse, shouldn't that still be held across this dude's a hero, right? In the eyes of those people, right? Same as the rest of us. But I've been seeing, and it seems like there is a line that you could draw with the people who have stood by aghast at the fact that anyone would celebrate young Luigi Mangione's actions. Like, how dare you guys? Why would you celebrate a murderer's act? And I would venture to guess that 99% of those people, if you check their profiles and they had anything to say about the George Floyd murder, it would be that the cop had every right to do what he did, and George Floyd was a drug user, and a blah, 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 and a drug seller, and a blah, blah, blah. It's interesting. And that's why I said we're at this point. We're at this inflection point in our society. Everybody can feel it. You can act like you don't. You can bury your head in sports gambling and or binge watching television shows. You can do it. You can bury your head in social media and keeping up with the Joneses and all that. You can do it. But it doesn't change where we're at. And whenever you poke your head out of that little matrix that you've crafted for yourself, it's going to be here. And the culture is obviously shifting. In directions that I don't think anybody foresaw. In ways that I don't think anyone would have said, yeah, one of the biggest stories to close out 2000 and one of the biggest I love the internet.
Razor needs to slice it so thin that it used to lick.
Luigi Mangione in about 9 months being taken care of. He's a good guy. Now, this is one thing, though. That guy, is that guy? This guy? Yeah, he kind of looks like him. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna hold you. This was a tough one, but they have that picture of him smiling. Because I guess when he was checking into the hostel, the attendant told him, the internet is crazy. What the fuck is happening right here? I fucking get with some of y'all. Oh, Christ. Like this guy, Luigi Mangione's plan was to incite leftists to cheer his killings, knowing they would read his posts outlining his true goal, the complete revitalization of Japanese culture, a return to tradition for the land of Yamato. What? I saw this post too. We were just reading it. Is that what you derived from that? Yeah. Let's see. 4 years at private boys' school, valedictorian, highest GPA, Bachelor of Science in Engineering, Master of Science in Engineering, $500,000 top-notch education, and Luigi Mangione end up murdering a stranger. Allegedly. What do you think, hustle bitch, where do you think he comes out on the... Our culture is just like so interesting right now because it makes for strange bedfellows, like being a conservative capitalist. So you have to side with the conservative capitalist who was undoubtedly at the helm of a company that saw to the deaths of thousands of people just by virtue of their business practices. Like, this isn't new information that many people have died at the hands of not their illness, so to speak, but their health coverage, their health care coverage. Now, again, I'm of the opinion that it's time for, that's why I said it's an inflection point. It's time for people to, you got to start taking your health more seriously than hoping that United Healthcare or Kaiser Permanente or your local hospital is like, watch what you put past your teeth. It starts at home, man.
What murder? He was the best guy around.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
That's how most people are feeling right now. Let me get this straight. Killer is Luigi Mandione, Ivy League grad with degrees in comp science, avid reader, active contributor on GitHub, has 130 plus IQ, but takes his mask off at a Starbucks to flirt with an employee. He wasn't at a Starbucks. See, this is where the story, he wasn't at a Starbucks. He was, that picture that he took where he's smiling was taken at the youth hostel, and apparently he was told, you can't check in if I don't see your face. Then an hour later, calmly kills the CEO of a major healthcare company, rides away on a bike. A week later, goes to a local McDonald's where he brings the murder weapon. Yeah, exactly. I do agree with this. The fake ID he used to check into the hotel and a written manifesto on how horrible the American healthcare system is somehow gets identified by a cashier after he sits down, works on his laptop until police come inside the McDonald's, sitting there with a ghost gun and a suppressor he made himself. Are we believing this? He goes to a park and ditches a backpack full of Monopoly money, but not the murder weapon. Plus, the backpack straps in the photo are different color than the back straps from the killing of Brian Thompson. The counter arguments are adding up. But he wanted to be caught. Okay, so why didn't he turn himself into the police directly? True. Had the gun on him for protection. You're telling me he couldn't have used literally anything other than the murder weapon itself as a concealed carry? You're a conspiracy theorist, bro. No, I'm just questioning the narrative because, as we have learned so many times, the official narrative is simply wrong. This actually makes sense to me. That's why I'm like, is it that simple that this is the guy? We caught him, you guys. We caught him in a McDonald's. Right. Come on. Now the eyebrows, though. The eyebrows are that, and this is a squint. So this doesn't necessarily mean this isn't that guy. Oh my gosh. This is so intriguing. Yeah, what about that? Like, why abscond if you wanted to be caught? Why leave it all? Why not just sit and wait for the cops to come? Why not shoot the guy and then turn yourself in? Like, if the whole thing was to, yeah, I did it, why would you run it all? Hell, why even mask your face? That part is interesting. Because, see, and this is the thing, is that when anybody hears deep fake, what they'll immediately think is, oh, an internet picture. No, I'm talking about something more along the lines of a completely fabricated thing. Like Luigi Mangione. Yeah, like, why would you discard the backpack but still have the murder weapon? And the ID that you checked into the hotel with. And your manifesto. Like, all those things could have been, I mean, was it that he was planning on doing away with himself and then just didn't have the heart to go through with it? And then, just spent time trying to, none of that makes any sense. Doesn't make common sense. Luigi Manione's parents paying $40K a year for high school at Gilman just for him to spend a life in prison is nasty work. Well, I mean, if that's what he chose to do with his life. See, that looks like the same kid. Doesn't that look like his smile? That definitely looks like him. You'd have to picture his head like, canted down with the eyebrows, the smile itself, toothy, curls at the edges. There's a little more of a Joker thing going on here at the corner. I don't know. I think that's the kid, man. I think that's him. Now the question is, because I thought this then, as I was like, well, this is a completely different jacket than the shooter had on. But it would be. He wouldn't have been there in his murder jacket. I guess that would have been in his backpack. I don't know. I'm just not even going to touch that one. Whoa, here he is graduating.
Well set.
He gave a speech.
Well set. Congratulations.
Headmaster Smythe, Mr. Hubeck, members of the Board of Trustees, family, friends, faculty, and fellow students, good afternoon.
Now we are to believe that this is the future vigilante, murderer.
Thank you all for being here to celebrate Gilman's 116th Founders Day. I'm honored to be speaking to you all today on behalf of the Gilman class of 2016. When I started writing the speech, I talked with several students and teachers and asked how they would describe the class of 2016. Many of the students characterized our class as inventive, in both imagination and initiative.
Oh,
at the same time,
right? Imagination. I mean, if you're just putting this up against himself, the imagination, the getaway plan seemed a little to fall short of imaginative.
Several teachers reminded me of our class's commitment to Gilman and its traditions. I came to realize that both views are correct.
Zero riz.
The class of 2016 is truly defined by its inventive, pioneering mentality that accompanies a strong commitment to Gilman tradition. Throughout its time here at Gilman, the class of 2016 has been coming up with new ideas and challenging the world around it. Our selling of Chick-fil-A during
How foreshadowing is that? Challenging the world around it. This kid single-handedly sent the biggest shot across the bow of the insurance racket. Single-handedly. While everybody's been crying and clamoring about it, he himself is responsible for Blue Cross Blue Shield going, maybe we won't take another step further toward graping our clientele.
during lunch.
A day after this kid allegedly shot the CEO of United Healthcare, articles, internal angst wasn't able to stop Blue Cross Blue Shield from doing what they were going to do. A CEO getting shot, though, that changed everything.
Arguably the staple of our class, provides a great example. In our sophomore year, when brainstorming ways to fundraise, we didn't just settle for the usual methods of selling spirit shirts and Christmas trees. In addition to this, we did what seemed impossible given the tight schedule of the school day and began shuttling dozens of Chick-fil-A sandwiches to Gilman between assembly and lunch. Soon, we were selling over 100 Chick-fil-A sandwiches each day, in what became likely one of the most successful class fundraisers in Gilman's history. But our ability to come up with new ideas didn't start then. I've noticed it as long as I've been here, even in my very first year as a sixth grader. If any of you have ever been on Gilman's campus before school starts, you would have noticed that every morning, rain or shine, The turf is filled with middle school students playing soccer, football, and frisbee. That tradition was actually started by the class of 2016. As many of you know, Gilman Middle School offers not one, but 2 recesses per day. But for the class of 2016, that wasn't enough. So, as 6th graders, rather than sitting in the hallways waiting for school to begin, we decided to give ourselves an extra morning recess before the morning even started. And now, 7 years later, that morning recess remains as a regular part of every school day. Of course, this isn't anything revolutionary, but it shows that even early on, the class of 2016 was challenging the world around it.
And this is their valedictorian.
Having great ideas, however, isn't enough to innovate.
Having great ideas isn't enough to innovate.
The class of 2016's inventiveness also stems from its incredible courage
to forge documents,
explore the unknown, and try new things.
Explore the unknown and try.
Just look at a few.
If this is the dude, this is eerily foreshadowing like the path that he chose to take pretty calmly.
2 highlights from our senior year. This April, 5 seniors performed in Gilman's spring musical, The Addams Family, all of whom had no prior musical experience.
Everything that he's talking about, like no prior experience, I'm quite sure he doesn't seem like he'd been practicing his whole life to be an assassin. No prior experience, but he pulls off, like, crazily enough, like a pretty, he was in the wind. It didn't seem like New York City cops had any inkling whatsoever how to find this cat. No prior experience, and all the precautions that he took going into it. For it to fall apart at the back end, the way that it did, seems weird.
3 seniors, Jeremy Booth, Gus Meny, and Jake Goodwin, lended lead roles, while Tommy Morey and
It seems weird, but it also seems pretty, like that's the natural progression of things. Like you didn't see it all the way through. You saw the beginning. I don't know. It's just the whole being in a McDonald's with everything on you is just kind of like, that's the end?
Chris Wolf helped put on the show.
Not very valedictorian-like behavior.
That I doubt any of us will forget. How about this winter, when Kevin Wang delivered his senior speech? As Kevin moved to America and joined our class in 9th grade, English isn't his first language. But that didn't stop him from delivering a both hilarious and thought-provoking speech about his transition to the United States. How about Ray Saunders meeting Gilman's first-year cybersecurity team?
How about that, Ray Saunders?
Even competing against hundreds of veteran teams, the Gilman squad managed to advance to the state and then regional championships. All of these endeavors took a huge amount of courage. They demonstrate that the class of 2016 truly has the fearlessness to explore new things and the obvious ability to excel.
The fearlessness to explore new things. Again, we have no reason to believe that Luigi Mangione, is it Mangione or Mangione? I just remember the guy, Chuck Mangione, the trumpet player. No prior experience to being an assassin, and it kind of showed in how this thing wrapped up, if in fact it's him. He did it all, that sounds crazy, he did everything right except for the most important part, which was the getting away. But it seemed like he wanted to be caught. But if you wanted to be caught, why didn't you just turn yourself in right then and there?
But as inventive as the class of 2016 is, our class was able to explore the new while also preserving the old. Just look back at the most significant and magical night of our senior year, the 100th annual Gilman McDonough football game. After hundreds of hours of preparation, our seniors led the Gilman team to victory. Competing in the second oldest football rivalry in the state of Maryland, however, they represented not just this year's team, but Gilman as an institution and all the alumni that preceded them. So the class of 2016 not only explored new frontiers, but also maintained Gilman's most important traditions. I think this combination of preservation and exploration is what Gilman is all about. Gilman maintains its classic core values by cultivating minds, body, and spirit in its students, but also champions an environment of acceptance and diversity, while excelling in its technological endeavors. This fusion is such a strong part of Gilman, it's even evident in its physical geography. Just look to the construction outside Gilman. Or outside. Gilman is actively rebuilding itself, but its brand new fields sit next to classic buildings like Cary Hall. Further, these new constructions, for example, Sotier Stadium, bear with them Gilman's rich history in their names. So it's no surprise that the class of 2016 picked up this ability to explore both new and old. And it's no surprise they were able to achieve all they did this year, these last few years as well. But it wasn't just Gilman as an institution that shaped our experience here. The people in our lives, especially our parents and teachers, had such huge roles as well. The parents here today, first off, sending us to Gilman was far from a small financial investment. I'd like to personally thank each of you for sending your sons here, as I can't imagine the class of 2016 without any one of these men on stage. Further, thank you for all the time and love you have put into our lives. You've instilled values in us, fed and clothed us, and simply been there for us every step of the way. I'd also like to thank every Gilman teacher and faculty member here today throughout all 3 divisions of the school. While the events and accomplishments I mentioned in the speech were meant to highlight the imagination and courage of the class of 2016, these occurrences also drew heavily from your efforts. Our imagination draws from your inspiration, and our courage largely depends on your encouragement in the classroom, on the fields, and on the stage. So parents and faculty, thank you for all you have done for us. Today is as much an achievement for you as it is for us.
What do you think his parents feel like?
As I conclude my speech, I have to remember that a valedictory, by definition, is a farewell. We seniors have been hiding from it all year, and I've even been avoiding it in my speech. But now it's time to face the truth. Our time as Gilman students has come to an end. It seems like just yesterday that we were freshmen, having tie wars and playing computer games in CT20, but now we're moving on. Just like we've done these past few years, we'll be exploring the unknown, whether that be attending colleges across the country, traveling the world during gap years, or fulfilling military service in foreign countries.
Oh, that sounds crazy.
As we embrace the new, however, we won't forget.
Did he do military years in foreign countries? Is that where he learned how to be an assassin? Do you see how cold-blooded he shot that man? Like, I don't think that there's not a lot of appreciation for how calm he was through that happening. He doesn't even
Fields. Our friendships, values, and memories from Gilman will always stay with us. So, to the class of 2016, a kind of class that only comes around once every 50 years.
You think it literally birthed at least the John Wilkes Booth of our generation. I won't go as far as calling him Lee Harvey Oswald. He could be. He doesn't strike me as a patsy, is all I'm saying. I liked the post where, it's being questioned, like, how it ended. And I think that the jury's literally still out on that, even in my own head. I'm kind of half in, half out as to whether or not this is really the guy. But, man, once in a 50-year, class, if it's responsible for graduating, the guy who quite possibly gave the biggest wake-up call to American capitalism, not just the health insurance industry, capitalism itself. Like how Cat Williams was to, entertainment industry debauchery, I'm saying this kid is to American capitalism, because what CEOs are on the notice of is that you better walk around with a lot of security, bud. And by all stretches, it doesn't seem like a kid. Like, what's the tuition to go to Gilman? We'll look it up.
It's been an incredible journey, and I simply can't imagine the last few years with any other group of guys. Thank you.
Crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, he spoke with the same calm demeanor that he shoots with. That's for sure. Was there a speech? I want to hear it. Go to the thing. Got to look it up. Click the link. Gilman is over $38K a year, and he had undergrad and grad degrees from Penn. This should be one of our best and brightest. So what does his alleged decision to commit this crime say about our young people? It says that his head's in the right place. Hold on. I guess that depends. Guess that depends on your value set. I think it's how do you come from the country of revolution? Here on the left, not just on the left. I guess it would be considered just on the left. It's crazy to me, like the attachment that conservatives and people on the right have to justice, except for when it comes to corporate injustice, and the chasm of difference there is between what transpires in the lives of everyday people in the course of everyday life, and then what can literally be attributed to corporate malfeasance that ends in death. A lot of death. And yet you still stay adherent to those values. It's crazy, but you support truth and justice, except for when and most of those people also are very American revolutionary. Fuck was that about? It was this spirit. I submit to you, counselor. He looks not just normal, but an exemplar. Smart guy, nice blazer. I find this is probably the most fascinating, the most fascinating way for this bizarre ass year to end. This story. That's cool. You guys, I'm telling you, man, Twitter is fucking stupid. Taylor Renz has disabled replies on her post after being called out for being friends with Luigi. Taylor Lorenz is his friend? No way. That's the kid. That's the guy. No way. There's a lot of young unmarried men in the West who are disillusioned. Luigi Mangione is not an isolated case. Lots of pent-up anger with men in their 20s. Unfortunately, I think there will be more violence coming. Yeah. I don't think you're wrong. Again, though, it's like, it's just funny how it's being depicted on either side. Whereas the majority of the people who have suffered at the hands of the insurance racket celebrate this guy, corporatists, and they're like, look at this guy like, oh, what a shame. Look what he did with his life. Mind you, this isn't a, God, it's so hard to talk about this without, fuck all that. This isn't a school shooter, right? Violence, nonetheless, absolutely. But this isn't he did in many people's mind, what he did was a heroic act. Because there is no question as to the detrimental effects of our healthcare system, the way that it's set up for millions. The amount of life lost at the hands of industry decisions literally ranges into the millions of people. So one guy, one CEO, which put all CEOs on notice, I think in Many different industries, not just this one. Because corporate capture and greed is an American capitalistic tradition. It's not something that is only applicable in the insurance game. It's just most glaring. Dog walker's back. Update. Violence is necessary in an Amazon review. What? Luigi Mangione rated a book, Industrial Society and Its Future. Ooh, by John Kaczynski. This is by Ted Kaczynski. This is by the Unabomber. Clearly written by a mathematics prodigy. Reads like a series of lemmas on the question of 21st century quality of life. It's easy to quickly and thoughtlessly write this off as the manifesto of a lunatic in order to avoid facing some of the uncomfortable problems it identifies. But it's simply impossible to ignore how prescient many of his predictions about modern society turned out. He was a violent individual, rightfully imprisoned, who maimed innocent people. While these actions tend to be characterized as those of a crazy Luddite, however, they are more accurately seen as those of an extreme political revolutionary. Yee! What? A take I found online that I think is interesting. Had the balls to recognize that peaceful protest has gotten us absolutely nowhere, and at the end of the day, he's probably right. Oil barons haven't listened to any environmentalists, but they feared him. That is foreshadowy. When all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive. You may not like his methods, but to see things from his perspective, it's not terrorism, it's war and revolution. Fossil fuel companies actively suppress anything that stands in their way, and within a generation or two, it will begin costing human lives by greater and greater magnitudes until the Earth is just a flaming ball orbiting third from the sun. Peaceful protest is outright ignored. Economic protest isn't possible in the current system. So how long until we recognize that violence against those who lead us to such destruction is justified as self-defense? Whoa. Whoa. Trying to tell you. These are the thoughts of, by the way, at first glance, just from reading it, this isn't a raving lunatic for sure. And if you see how he carried himself throughout the deed, did it seem like a guy who was unhinged? The act itself will be considered crazy. But, I mean, it was well thought out. It was executed almost to perfection. No one should die. I'm just saying. It was well executed. Calmly executed. He never shuffles his feet. He never even so much as shuffles his feet when firing the shots. These companies don't care about you or your kids or your grandkids. They have zero qualms about burning down the planet for a buck. Exchange out oil companies and exchange in insurance, the insurance racket, the healthcare racket. So why do we have any qualms about burning them down to survive? We're animals just like everything else on this planet, except we've forgotten the law of the jungle and bend over for our overlords when any other animal would recognize the threat and fight to the death for their survival. Violence has never solved anything is a statement uttered by cowards and predators. Whoa! Holy shit. Hold on. I need some cleansing beats. Whoa. Whoa. Jeez. Jeez. Let's go with this. I just need something without words in it. Whoa. That's intense. That's intense. And it's I think it's like when you read through it, these are not the words of a manic individual. These are the words of a revolutionary. These are not the thoughts of some manic, crazed person. Everything that was said in this little soliloquy about the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. Do you know who the Unabomber is? Oh, there's an interview? Holy shit.
If you are a man or a boy, and you have a brother, especially an older brother, and you know that the bond between brothers is unlike any other. Sometimes that bond is almost impossibly wonderful.
Very often we used to go out and play catch, or one of us would hit the ball to the bat and the other one would catch it. And I remember one time when we were throwing that ball, we were as far...
Ted Kaczynski is the Unabomber, a homegrown terrorist who over the course of 17 years planted or mailed at least 16 bombs. He killed 3 people and wounded 24. He wasn't a religious fundamentalist, but he was a fundamentalist. His enemy was essentially modern society. He grew up in Chicago, attended Harvard, but he wound up living alone in a remote cabin in the Montana woods. He was arrested in 1996 after one of the most notorious and longest manhunts in history, and he was sentenced to life in prison. How did he finally get caught? His younger brother, David, turned him in. Were you surprised when you learned that it was David who had turned you in? Were you surprised?
Not terribly surprised.
I interviewed Ted Kaczynski in 1999, 3 years after he was arrested for the crimes that earned him the name the Unabomber. He was in the same prison then as he is today, a federal supermax in Florence, Colorado. Just in terms of your life in prison again, I'm just wondering a little bit about your daily routine. Do you get 8 hours of sleep a day?
Yeah, usually not all at once. I'll give you, let's say...
I had been writing a magazine article about his brother, David, the hero of the Unabomber story, if there was such a thing. Then I learned that Ted was writing a book that wound up never being published. And the book spent most of its time attacking David as intellectually dishonest and resentful of his brilliant big brother. I requested an interview with Ted, even though he didn't do that kind of thing, and to my surprise, he agreed.
Food here, believe it or not, is pretty good.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's...
We talked for several hours. He sat on a concrete bench in a concrete room, a wall of reinforced glass between us.
I take a shower every other day, rather than every day, because I have sensitive skin.
Most of our conversation that day was about David and Ted. Ted and David, the brothers Kaczynski. Ted, the older brother by 7 years, intellectually domineering and socially awkward. David, a more tender touch, more adept at living in the real world, but also enthralled to his big brother's love of nature and his hatred of an over-industrialized society. He followed Ted, among other places, into the wilderness. As modern as their story was, it also felt ancient, like Isaac and Ishmael, or Greek tragedy. More than anything, it was about the enormous leverage that a big brother can exert on a younger one. Now, I don't mean to say that brotherly love isn't real. It is. And as the youngest of 4 brothers myself, I've experienced a lot of it. But with brothers, there can be a lot of other stuff too. Rivalry, resentment, insecurity. There are things that if other people told you to do them, you just laugh.
I want to hear from the Unabomber. I really don't want to hear this guy soliloquy about the Unabomber. I want to hear his motivations. So we're going to get out of that. Oh, he died too. What did he die of?
Ted Kaczynski, the convicted terrorist known as a Unabomber, died by suicide. That's according to the Associated Press and the New York Times. The 81-year-old was found dead in his cell yesterday at a federal prison medical center in North Carolina. He was given life-saving measures, but pronounced dead at the hospital. Kaczynski was serving a life sentence following his conviction for numerous male and university bombings, which went on from 1978 to 1995. Those bombings killed 3 people and injured nearly 24 others.
It's funny because, terrorist is what he was. There's no getting away from that. A pipe bomb campaign, or just it's different than walking up on a guy and shooting him in cold blood. That's for sure. And there's a protected space for the nonviolent. To call it nonviolence is to say that these CEOs and their practices aren't traditionally thought of as violent. The outcomes, obviously, are different. The outcomes are often seen as violent to the people who suffer. If you've ever lost a family member or even just watched a family member struggle with the healthcare system, the callous nature of the healthcare system after you pay and you pay and you pay, and their bottom line is to find out different ways to deny you the services that you paid for. And if you lose somebody to that system, you might not call that assault type violence. It might not be a drive-by, but it's violent nonetheless to the people who suffer in those circumstances, for sure. The predatory practices of the denial of coverage or bullshit like, this with, Blue Shield, like, okay, we'll cover 90 minutes worth of anesthesia. But everything past that, you're on your own, means that doctors will either speed up procedures, which doesn't sound good. That sounds like a form of violence. Or deny certain procedures because it's like, well, that's going to be a 3-hour procedure, and this client, this particular patient doesn't have the type of coverage that would cover past that, so I won't recommend that because you can't afford it. That doesn't sound violent. Now, again, personally, I look at Western medicine, and I just think we should all think about what healthcare actually is. And maybe that's part of the deal. Maybe part of the deal is, that in vampire folklore, a vampire can't come in your house unless you invite them, right? They can't come in unless you invite them. Let me say that again for the cheap seats. They cannot come in uninvited. But once you invite them in, all bets are off. That's your ass, Mr. Postman, right? So I kind of liken as a culture, the consumer in every facet of a capitalist living, the consumer has offered himself up to the vampire. Oh, I gotta spend. I gotta have healthcare. Well, maybe just eat a better diet. No, that's not healthcare. That's not healthcare. Healthcare is being able to go to the hospital when I'm sick. Okay, well, why would you get sick? Well, because people just get sick. It's like, yeah, sometimes. Many of the time, people get sick because of their diet, their lifestyle. So therefore, if you aren't willing to watch it on the front end, well, you're just submitting yourself to the cause on the back end. You feel what I'm saying? Like the healthcare industry is responsible for, you're not going to want to believe this, but like the food pyramid, right? Watch this. The food pyramid was instituted by companies that wanted to sell shit. Let's see. How much of the food pyramid still exists as healthy eating practices? Food pyramid is a representation of the optimal number of servings to be eaten each day. Look where fruits and vegetables. Look where fruits and vegetables like lie on this pyramid. This whole group, where do you think lactose intolerant comes from? If cheeses and then again, meat proteins. The human body is not set up to digest meat proteins. All of these things fall underneath the two most important parts of any healthy, nutritious diet. Your fruits and your vegetables. More of these than even these. And then they threw grains in there that you find out like white flour. We're finding all these things out now. All that stuff just turns like white bread, flour. All it just turns into basically glue in your stomach. Seed oils, we're finding out that, seed oils aren't the best way to go. This was at one point in time thought of as, that's a nutritious breakfast, or that's good eating. And these things were instituted by the dairy industry, the bovine meat industry, because this helped these guys sell their wares. I'm just saying. If you look up most consensus healthy ways of eating in 2024, what you'll find out is much of this food pyramid is bullshit. Most people will tell you don't eat a lot of cheese, don't consume a lot of dairy. It just contributes to mucus buildup. You really have a hard time digesting and processing most meats. Most meat protein stays in the gut. What do they always tell you? You got to get your colon cleansed because most meat protein stays in the gut. You think that's how the human body was designed? To just hold on to waste material? No. Because if you eat plants, if you eat plant matter, it passes through the system easier. Go figure. Same thing if you eat a lot of bread. If you eat a lot of bread and you experience constipation, throw a 1 in the chat. It's not conducive to a healthy diet. These are new things, by the way. Ancient civilizations didn't have a ton of pastas and bullshit. It's just a way to sell stuff. So the food industry, the healthcare industry, it's like, you need healthcare to stay healthy. No, you need to live healthily to stay healthy. Drink water, mix in some fruits and vegetables. Eliminate seed oils as best you can. Maybe not something, back off on the dairy a little bit. Processed sugars. It's not easy for everybody to eat like that. Okay, it's true. But the quicker you can get around to finding yourself in that place, and 90% of the time it's an issue of taste. It's not what you can afford to eat. It's what you're willing to eat. Like, you'd be better off eating canned vegetables and fruits than processed. Even if those, whatever they've been through, it's going to come out a lot easier on the other side, if you understand what I'm saying. Than constantly pork chops, steaks, ground, just things that don't digest well. So you've invited yourself into, or invited the vampire into your home when it comes to the healthcare industry, just by virtue of the way we take care of ourselves. So there's that. But, well, it's a vampire, so of course it's going to suck your blood. I was going to say the vampire doesn't have to bite you in the neck, but at that point in time, it's just a vampire doing what a vampire does. You ever heard that parable of the scorpion and the turtle? And there's a flood on the river, and they want to cross. And the scorpion says to the turtle, "Hey, man, let me ride across on your back." And the turtle's like, "Nah, I'm not doing that because you're just going to sting me. You're going to sting me, and I don't want to get stung." And he's like, "I'm not going to sting you, I promise. Come on, you're not going to let me sit over here on the bank and drown to death, are you?" And the turtle's like, "I don't know, man. This sounds like not a good thing for me. I don't know. I'm just going to go over by myself." And he's like, "Please don't leave me over here by myself. Like, come on, have a heart." And the turtle's like, "All right, man, get on my back." He starts swimming across. Just as he's about to get to the shore, pop, 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 the scorpion stings him. And the turtle's paralyzed and starting to submerge underneath. "Why'd you do that?" Scorpion's like, "Scorpion. It's my nature. It's what I do." The moral of the story being, if you submit yourself to some of these practices, while you should expect them to not be predatory in their lending practices or profit-driven in their healthcare practices, capitalism gonna capitalize. They're gonna do what it does. And you would see these companies change their policies if the people turned away from them in a revolutionary manner. Like, I'm just not spinning with y'all. When he says economic, in this deal, when he says economic protest isn't possible in the current system, I disagree with that. I think it's not that it's not possible. I just think that it's the last thing that consumers would ever choose to do, is to protest with their dollars. How you spend them, what you spend it on, because we've grown so accustomed to our wants. Pretty basic. Anyway, this ought to be an interesting story to watch unfold. This ought to be a pretty interesting story to watch unfold, because if he's really the guy, what is this? Utilitarian ethics versus virtue ethics. Utilitarian. The action is good if the consequences are good. Virtue. The action is good if it's what a virtuous person would do. Poll results indicate respondents' moral frameworks. Homicide, worse consequences. Rape, worse virtues. Ah! Oh, this was my laugh track. That's why it's not there. Well, I got a whole show that I got to do in 4 hours. So, damn, Luigi. If this dude ever gets free, he's going to be neck deep in pussy. When I first became agnostic, I was almost anti-religion, thought religious people were wasting precious time and trapped in a delusion. But now I see no problem with it if they aren't pushing their beliefs and it helps them cope with death, etc. I'm kind of jealous, actually. That was from 2021. Random tweet. I mean, I don't think we have any idea what we're looking at. I don't think this dude was emotionally distraught at all. I think he's got a lens that he sees life through, and it's a very American lens. It's a revolutionary spirit. That's what's so funny about his detractors. Most of his detractors are very pro-America. And they don't even see the revolutionary spirit. They don't see it. Because you're captured by your side. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, the coming days and months and years are going to be interesting. Oh, I think it's an indictment on our value set or lack thereof. Yeah, but which values? You know what I mean? Which value set? Profit over people? It's definitely not an insight. It's definitely speaking, I think, to that value set of profit over people. It seems to be a very, some people would say, principled stance. It's hard for me personally. It's not that I don't weep for the dead, but people die every day. That's just a reality of all kinds of circumstances. And it's just kind of hard for me to hear people hold this particular CEO in this revered space of just a poor guy trying to get it done. He was just doing his job. He was gunned down. It's like, well, what he represented might be like, because predatory lending, like, stupid, dumb, high interest rate lending, you don't have to get a loan. There's just a certain, no women's, no kids, and then leave the infirmed out of your profit schemes. Because at that point in time, nobody asked to be there. Right? And so when your profit scheme is to look at the infirmed and be like, how can I maximize profit in this area? When the Hippocratic Oath for the healthcare system, by virtue of the Hippocratic Oath for every doctor, is first do no harm. So it's like, go make money over there in latex sales, or, go maximize profit in, I don't know, chip building or whatever. But in the healthcare field, if it's a profit-driven exploit, millions of people get hurt in ways that you would think are unimaginable. Like, you look at this kid's value set and you'd say it's unimaginable that anyone would think that this is the way that you hash out your differences. No, what's unimaginable is that a company would produce heroin knowing that it would destroy a generation's worth of Americans, and then be allowed to sell said heroin as a medical intervention by virtue of the Food and Drug Administration. That's diabolical. and no less murderous, I submit to you, than what this dude did last week. So there.
Not bad, meaning good.
I'm going to take a break, and then I'll be back in like 3 or 4 hours to talk about sports. Good news travels fast. You're welcome.
And now it's time to play everybody's favorite game.
We can't wrong.